Yeah. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but
No problem.
so you were saying basically there is a shift in people's belief in the practice of when to publish these things, right?
Yeah, uh, there's a tradition in journalism that you don't publish an allegation at the last minute because of the belief that the candidate doesn't have time to respond and that the public doesn't have time to sort it out. The reality, of course, is that that happens all the time, and that's kind of what I think of as analog thinking, based on the days when the news cycle was the morning newspaper, or the nightly news. And now, these things are going on at the last minute. We had yesterday, in Wisconsin, there was the announcement that, at least I saw a headline to this effect, that Foxconn was going to actually end up bringing jobs to Wisconsin, which was a boost to Scott Walker, the governor. And so anyway, what we had done in North Carolina for our fact-checking project was, realizing that many publications would have this old way of thinking, we tried to finish our fact-checking by Friday so that we could offer our fact checks to them before then, and so they could publish them over the weekend. So, and I don't know how many of them did. That's something our students will be tallying up here in the next couple of days. So, it's pretty funny. All right, I think you guys are frozen. But you all look happy and engaged. Are you there?
I can't see them. I just see a picture.
Okay.
Of June. But I'm here.
Hey, Bill. Sorry, I think we just lost the internet connection completely for the last 1 minute or so.
Sorry about that. Well, the story got a lot better, June. You guys really you missed the exciting ending. Anyway, I just said that we had, recognizing the reality of it, we published everything on Friday. So, but we don't know how many people actually copied. We were hoping that news organizations would publish this article, and so we, which is the reason we did it when we did, because we wanted more news organizations to pick up this article and publish it.
Right. So compared to the last election cycle, would you say you had more fact checks to do?
It's not an apples to apples comparison, because what we did in North Carolina, I was very focused on North Carolina because I was helping out the News and Observer. And so it was a different kind of, I think if I looked at the national fact checking, it was a different kind of election. For example, there was a lot more debunking of things that were not just campaign commercials, campaign materials, things like that. Like in the last 48 hours before the election, PolitiFact did a lot of really good things where they would debunk rumors that were spreading on Reddit or Facebook, things that were, I think, really spreading through social media. And that was, I think, really helpful for PolitiFact to do that. And that was things that they did not do in the last election. And they fact-checked right up to the last minute. I think the last PolitiFact national fact-check was published last night at about 6:30 p.m. Mm-hmm. So it was a very different kind of thing. So I think the nature of fact-checking has evolved. It's not just about fact-checking candidates anymore. I do think that candidates and elected officials are still the source of most of the things that people are hearing, but where I think there was a lapse, I think there was not enough fact checking at the state and local level. You know, we think about politics and fact checking, we think about national fact checking. And there was not enough doing what we did, which was fact checking members of Congress running for office, running for reelection. There was not enough fact checking, and hardly any, of state legislative races. So that's where the real need is, because there's as much problem with falsehoods and exaggerations at the state level, but there just aren't as many journalists checking it. I mean, there's no real need for additional fact checking of Donald Trump. There are 5 organizations that are checking everything he says, but there was no one checking District 51 in North Carolina, So anyway, well, should I get started? What's your...
Yeah, most of us are here. Why don't you dive in? You have the stage today.
All right. So what I thought, and this is the first time I've given this, and I thought this would be a good group to test this on. I thought it would be cool for you guys to see what we've done with our UX testing. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Are you guys seeing, which screen are you seeing now?
We're seeing your presentation screen, not the slides, but your with your notes and everything.
Okay, I was afraid of that. Okay, I'm gonna switch and see if I move it over here. I've got 3 different screens, so I never know where things show up. Well, see, that's weird.
We don't mind seeing your notes, by the way. That'll work too.
Well, the notes don't have any. It's not like there's anything other than.
Okay.
You're just going to see multiple copies of it. Let me try moving this here. Let's see that. Okay, what are you seeing now?
Still that screen.
Okay.
But I think we should be fine with that too, if it's too difficult to resolve.
Okay, I'm gonna. I disconnected, so by doing this, you should eliminate that problem. Okay, there we go. Is that better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so so I'm going to start actually with a little, go back in time to a PowerPoint that I've carried in my laptop, actually a PowerPoint that I started using 8 years ago. And when the whole idea of on-screen fact-checking of TV ads is not new. It's not new to me, but I began to conceive how it would look using PolitiFact in 2010. And I called it Closing the Gap, the pop-up truthometer. And I talked about how the future of media is about screens. And you can see how dated it is. This was one of the original iPads, and that's probably an iPhone 3, something 3G, whatever that was called. And this was specific for PolitiFact. You can see the old PolitiFact logo there. And I envisioned it like this. You're sitting on your bed, you're watching a soccer match, and a campaign ad comes on. This was a campaign ad in the 2010 campaign in Florida, and your PolitiFact app detects the ad and realizes that PolitiFact has rated it, and the truth-o-meter pops up false. And it's a very simple concept, but it seemed to me that that's what the future would look like. And to me, back then, I thought the future was all about the truth-o-meter. And so my PowerPoint, also a product of the times, had modeled and I envisioned that this is one of basically conceiving how it might work on one of the first internet-enabled TVs, that you would have a split screen with your internet on your TV. The ad would come on. Your PolitiFact app would be working. It would detect the ad. The truth-o-meter would pop up false, and then it would maybe pop up an ad that might pay for the PolitiFact app, and then it might just give you a sentence. This was foreshadowing what you would later write, Erica, for the summarizing why the ad was false. So that was 2010. That's what I thought it would be like. And it kind of has, it's shaping up that way. But here we are in 2018, and we're getting close enough that we decided that we would begin to test what form fact-checking actually should take on a TV screen, because of the good progress that we have made for this project. And so we decided, let's test it. So now fast forward to today, we're going to make it a reality. So here we are with our Tech and Check cooperative. And so we set out a couple of months ago to answer a few questions. Will viewers like on-screen fact-checking? Where should it be on the screen? And that's not necessarily obvious, as you saw just in those two examples. I think I had it in the upper right corner. Should we show details of the statement that's being checked? What details of the fact check should we show? Should we include the conclusions? In other words, whether it's false or half true or whatever. Should we include a rating device like the truth-o-meter? So these are all really key questions that we wanted to answer. So we hired a company called Blink. Blink is a UX company based in Seattle. And they've done some work for Amazon, for Microsoft, for NASA, came highly recommended. And so we hired them to work very quickly, because our original hope was that we would be able to do this in time for a debate for the campaign. So we hired them to take 3 fact check design concepts. In other words, presenting the fact checks in 3 different ways. We used already published fact checks from the 2013 and 2016 State of the Union addresses. We started with 16 participants. That was reduced to 15 because one participant ended up having quite a bias against one of the speakers in our speech in one of the State of the Union addresses, and Blink determined that this person was not a reliable participant for the study. We did the sessions at the Blink office in Seattle. Although 5 of them were remote, we agreed to allow some of them to be remote because we wanted to be able to get a good cross section of people politically. So you can see here we had 5 Democrats, 6 independents, 5 Republicans, and a mix of gender and age. We tested positions on weird corners. And then what in TV is known as the lower third, which is what you think of as sort of the lower part of the screen where you typically get most of your information on a cable news channel. We tested with and without a rating device, which in this case was a truthometer. We tested with and without a rating word, which would be a word like false or true. And we tested with what we called summary text only. So that would be just text that described the statement and provided information about the relative accuracy of the statement through facts. So here on this, you can see this is with the rating device, a truthometer. So for consistency, we used PolitiFact. And these were all actual fact checks that PolitiFact had done of the State of the Union addresses in 2013 or 2016. And so you can see here, this was one placed in the upper left for Obama's 2013 speech. Here's one with the rating word, and this is in the lower third. And you can see there the rating word is true. Now this looks a little small depending on how big you guys have the screen there. But on the big screen in the office at Blink, it was plenty big. We didn't have any problem with the testers being able to see it. And here is just the summary text. And you can see this is a very meaty example. And it contrasts pretty sharply with the much more skimpy amount of information provided in the other two options. And you'll see when I get to the reaction to that, there was definitely a preference for more information like this. And this actually was what Erica called what did you call it, Erica?
Fact heavy.
Fact heavy, the fact heavy option. And we iterated after the first day of tests. We talked to Blink and they asked us to put more detail in the summary text. And Erica came up with these much more detailed summary texts, which then became the most popular. And then Blink turned around and concluded that they were the best, which we decided was a little bit of an obvious leap. It was like, if as you iterate, naturally the thing that you're improving is going to be better. And so we didn't necessarily think that it was an apples to apples comparison then to draw a conclusion about the thing that we iterated about. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But clearly viewers did like this a lot. And so there was definitely, there are good lessons about that. And notice here the word related fact check. This was something that, as I think I've mentioned before when I've talked about how we'll present content, this is an important phrase. And it's something that it took me a while to realize how critical this is, as we used to be hung up on the idea that we needed a perfect match. And the reality is that that's just not going to happen that often, that for all your great work in matching, that you're going to be going into a database of previously published fact checks. The odds are there probably is not a perfect match with what the person said in the speech that you're checking with a previously published fact check. So we need to always label the fact checks related. And so this is a phrase that we used in all of our tests, and that we actually asked people about. And it's something that is a little bit odd for this particular test, because this particular test is actually one of the rare conditions when you technically do not need to call it related, because these fact checks are actually on the actual words. So this is the rare time when you don't need to say they're related. But for the purposes of the test, we chose to begin to get people's reaction to that phrase. This is the testing condition. We watched some of the tests remotely, and this is what we saw. We saw someone sitting on this red couch, such as this lady, and then we saw the inset of the speech that they were watching. Chris had created the short videos and given Blink the ability to choose different ways to present the content, and that's what displayed the fact checks in the different formats. So now so the biggest one, people like this, and I think this is the most important finding. This is really popular. So in everything you do, you should know that people want this. We're doing something that will be a great public service. The public wants it. All participants said they would want to use a fact check tool during live political events. So we're giving the public what it wants. There's an opportunity to create new products. Some participants said they would actually prefer watching speeches with fact checks if given a choice. And I found that very heartening. And then some participants also talked about the nice goal here of holding very positive end of this that should warm our hearts is that we're doing important work that people want. People think it's important. It creates the opportunity for new products. So that's very encouraging. So moving to some of the specifics, we found that we definitely need to do a better job on the screen telling people who did the fact checking and how the conclusions were reached. User needs and expectations for the fact checks when watching live TV may be different from their needs and expectations when using websites and social media. So this was a big takeaway for me, that we need to realize this experience is different. TV is not the same as when people come to a fact-checking site like the Washington Post or factcheck.org or PolitiFact. We also need to establish their expectations. At least 5 users believe that when there was no fact check appearing, and I'm going to show you a video here in a second, hopefully you're going to get the audio. At least 5 users believed when a fact check did not appear, it meant the statement was true. So in other words, the absence of a truthometer, the absence of a rating meant that we, the fact checkers, had concluded the statement was true, which of course is not the case. You know, the only fact checks that go up are the ones where the journalists have actually had time to do the fact checking. But there are many other things that are said that the fact checkers just have not had time to rate. And so this is a incorrect assumption that people are making. So we need to establish this expectation. So I'm going to play this video. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Just kind of it seemed like it was all coming up only when false, you know, when there was a fact check needed to be made. So, you know, and maybe that's easier on the viewer. If it's true, just let it ride. If something needs clarification, then that's maybe when it would pop up.
I'm guessing that fact check has come up because whoever's speaking, that person has said something that is not consistent with the truth. If there is no fact check and on the video, then I'm guessing that whoever's doing fact checking has done their research and decided that what the speaker has said is consistent with the truth.
Oops. Did everybody hear that okay?
Yeah.
So, clearly those people misunderstood, and that's on us. We're going to have to establish some expectations here in how we design the user experience. Okay, a couple more findings. So people were split over text only versus ratings. So when the Blink people talked to the participants about the summary text option versus using the rating device or the rating word, the split was 8 in favor of just the summary text versus 7 who liked the rating device or rating word. We had some disagreement about this as we talked about how significant this was. The Blink people thought this was more significant. The more we talked about it, I felt like this was could be very much a function of how we had tweaked the summary text and made it better over the course of the experiment. And so the fact that it really is evenly split, I think, just shows we need to study this more to determine the best way to present the fact checks, whether it is with just summary text or whether using some sort of rating device or rating word is still effective. So I think the jury is still out on this. They need to be explained. We definitely heard from people who didn't understand some of the ratings, particularly ratings such as half true, mostly false. So this again speaks to a need to explain how the process of fact-checking works. And along these lines, participants told Blink they would like a source or citation for the fact checks. Even participants who generally trust the media were slightly suspicious of the source. So that was pretty interesting. One way to do that would be to add the logo of the fact checker to the screen so viewers are reminded of the source. So in other words, we would in this case clearly communicate the content comes from perception that the content is editorialized or biased by the network. There was, although there was some discussion of the phrase related fact check, Blink felt we should continue to use it. Okay, let me just show you a little discussion about the source or citation.
No, the one thing I could think of is having some sort of citation for the fact checking. I understand in real time that might be difficult, but some sort of fact checking to make sure that the numbers that you're receiving are accurate and in themselves.
Hands down. I don't know how much I almost feel like I want to fact check, but I think that's something different than what you're looking for, right? You're looking more for the design.
Sure, but why did you want to fact check the fact check?
You just never know. Like, I do feel like, well, this is whoever it is putting this on, it's CNN promoting this, or it's on their channel and they're putting the fact check there. They're fact checking themselves. I want to go to something else to fact check CNN, or if it's ABC producing this and having the fact check on the bottom, I want to go to fact checker or to fact check ABC or so, that it's a different source than just the people who are presenting it and the people who are presenting it again.
Okay. So you interpret this as, and clarify me if I'm wrong or correct me, as, okay, let's say it is CNN who is doing this. You think that CNN is then providing this information?
Yeah, I mean, because there's nothing there that says like from factcheck.org or PolitiFact or whoever else, like there's nothing there that's saying like where the information is coming from. My interpretation is that it's coming from the same people who are broadcasting this.
Okay.
I like Kelly. I think we need to hire her.
Yeah, she knows. She knows all these organizations and insights.
So a few final things here from Blink that I thought were very helpful. They had some suggestions specifically about our wording of our statements, and the thing that was pretty interesting here. They got very detailed on particular fact checks, which particularly fact check summaries, which we had done pretty quickly, and so they really got into great detail on them. Some of the people, and it's hard to tease out people's political views and personal biases about journalism versus just how we're presenting fact-checking on a TV screen. So when they say things like it's editorializing, whatever, well, fact-checking by itself is not actually editorializing, but fact-checking is definitely a unique form of journalism that reaches a conclusion. So for people to say, I don't want fact-checking that reaches a conclusion is basically to say, I don't want fact-checking. So at some point there's there's an exclusion where people who say that are just people who aren't going to want our product. But you can see there were some people who didn't like some of the wording, and so Blink tried to adjust to that. Some of their other recommendations, they wanted to display fact checks consistently to make clear when statements are true or false. Now that's one way we could do that would be by not showing fact checks when they're true, but by doing that, you could give that every statement that doesn't get a display is true, and obviously we can't do that. So this is their recommendation: simplify the experience by using just the summary text design. So this is their preference, not to use the rating word. The rating word we had thought would be the #1 choice because Facebook, in its user experience testing, has found that's the most popular. Display the fact check immediately following a statement. In other words, roughly 1 to 2 seconds. What we were, and they think that's a good time lapse. Show it long enough so it's readable, roughly 15 seconds, depending on the length. Remove rating words and rating devices to avoid visual clutter and distraction. Again, I think we need to do more testing of that. Clearly communicate and display the fact check source to build credibility. And then here are just some of their specific edits of our fact-heavy options. And then they did a little mock-up of how they thought it could look if it were used on CNN to be clear. PolitiFact is the source, how the related fact check would look, and how this logo. I thought that was very helpful. And then back to this guy. So anyway, that's what we learned. I think it was a good first step. We definitely want to do some more research. Definitely want to explore more some of these questions about rating words, and I think our next step is to do another study with a larger sample. So anyway, happy to if anybody has questions.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Super interesting. I do have a whole bunch of questions. So one question I have is, did anybody mention that they like more interaction? So for example, you pop that, you give them 15 minutes to read the fact check for, not 15 seconds, but would it be nice if they could say, click on something? No, I'm thinking really in a browser setting, but it would be really nice if they can follow up on that fact check and read more, right? People tend to want more information, but obviously we cannot just display all that information right on the screen.
Right. So we were not specifically seeking that, June. We tried to stay focused on the on-screen experience. So I don't think that was not part of our regular questions. I'm sure people did. Erica, do you remember, did that ever come up?
Well, they only tested on TVs. So the person was always in a living room experience with a television, not on a computer, I don't think.
Right.
Except on the remote ones, but that was a little bit of a different situation where it was still simulating a television screen.
Yeah. So the other question I have is, so I think this rating, whether to have the rating where it's there or not, I'm just thinking about one particular case where this is really happening live and we do not have a perfect match, right? So it could be that it could be the case that an earlier fact check that you have done is stated in the exact opposite way, right? So for example, there was a fact check that says maybe unemployment rate is going down, and that was rated, let's say, false. And then during the debate, the opposite was stated. Now, obviously, you have a related fact check, but the rating on original rating of the fact check would be just the exact opposite to the rating you would give to the actual live claim, right? So, so in that case, it's really difficult without some human intervention to actually figure out what is the right rating word to use, and is it clear enough that this rating applies to the claim being made or the claim or the related fact check, right? You know what I mean?
Totally. And this is the same thing that Ethan and Caroline went through to some extent with just trying to get the matching for fact checks where the reference was to something that was obscured by a pronoun or something, and or where the statement was about one word and the fact check claim, the fact check statement was something related but not the same. So I totally get it. Yeah, I think that's an important complication that we're going to have to sort out. And I think I sort of tentatively call that the mirror image problem. So the example I think of is we had one where we rated David Brooks saying that preventive health care does not save money, and he earned a true. And then President Obama made the opposite statement in a speech to Congress, and we drew exactly on that fact check, published a new fact check very quickly, and obviously flipped it around and rated it false. So how would we treat that in a TV setting? So you'd say related fact check. It really has to be God, if the bot's doing it, how does the bot know?
Yeah, it's very hard.
What do you think, Erica?
I don't know. This gets back to I kind of have the same concern about putting ratings images on politicians while they're talking if the bot is doing it. But yeah, and I also think that, if we're doing this in a live setting, how does the bot get a fact-heavy summary too? Like, it does seem like there would need to be at least some human work ahead of time to pre-fill a summary or fact-heavy presentation of a fact check to be able to push in at a moment's notice too.
I think isn't this what this seems exactly what the human harnessing team is working on, and kind of I know that Matt, Archana, and everyone like on the team, like they've been working on coming up with a sort of front end of this, like how this would appear. And have you seen that, Professor Adair?
No, I have not. Okay.
So I think Matt did a presentation maybe 2 meetings ago about this. Yeah. So basically, it's an interface for human editors to go in and basically double check on the result of the fact checks and maybe reword them before presentation and so on. So I think with enough delay to the live events, we can make it happen, right? But there needs to be, it's not automatic. It's just an interface that makes it easier for human editors to go in and change things. But we will need to introduce some delay for that to happen.
How much delay do you think you would need?
That really depends on how fast the editors can figure out how long it would take them to figure out, how to package this up for mass consumption, right? For public consumption.
I'm thinking that if we had a fact check on something like the preventative healthcare example that you just gave, that if we did have it worded in different ways, and when it showed up on the editor's screen, if we had a multiple choice option, right? And then we might have an option where they could type something else if it's completely different. But we have it worded like our original way. We have the mirror image wording as well. And then if we had a multiple choice, then that would allow the editor to kind of just pick the one that's most related to what's been said on TV or right then.
So the way I'm thinking about it, it's like the quick takes, right, in fact stream.
Right.
So if we provide an interface for editors to enter quick takes, right, and what we do is we surface all the related fact checks, and the editor can decide, here's a quick take, and I say, yes, the claim is true, but that's because of these certain related fact checks we had in our database. And those could be rated false in opposite ways, and so on and so forth. So there will be no ambiguity as to whether the ratings of those original fact checks, how they are interpreted, right? Because the human curator would always say the claim is true or false, but based on these earlier fact checks. And maybe that could be presented that way too, right? Here's a quick take, the statement is true or false based on these earlier ones.
Right.
Yeah.
More information to show, but it's trade-off, I guess.
Human touch.
Well, I'd love to. I guess I missed that. Did I miss that meeting 2 weeks ago? I guess so. But I'd love to know more about the human harness idea. I mean, I know that we've talked about that idea of a sort of serving up options, and then I think of it like you serve up options, and then the fact checker editor just goes, I'll take number 2 or I'll take number 3. And I do think that's realistic, and I do think that they could go pretty quickly because that's what they do during a debate or a speech. So I don't think they need a ton of time. 30 seconds, easy. They could do it in. So if your voice to text takes 20 seconds and your match takes 20 and you gave another 30, I don't know. Do we think we can do a match in 30?
I think we should be able to do match in 30. So I was just talking to Harry about this. But yeah, with some optimization, I think we can trim it down to 30. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's something. Be happy to talk more about.
Great.
Awesome.
All right. Any other questions for Bill? Yeah, so Matt?
I was just wondering, do you think it's worth, I know one of the problems you said was like the no fact check is assumed true. Is it worth giving the curators like an option where they can just say like none of these are applicable, and you can sort of have like a third like question or like unknown, whether it's sort of need for more information?
Right, that's a good idea.
For that.
Yeah. So kind of like we're working on this, or just put some sort of flag on there and saying, well, I'm not sure. I mean, or this is worth checking.
Yeah.
We don't have the results yet, but.
Right. Yes, and we did that actually in some debates where we would go on Twitter and say that, and say, hey, you know, we're intrigued by this statement, we're looking into it, and I think that would be, you know, like flag it in a unique color.
Yeah.
And the other reason the fact checkers would like that is it would bring people back to their websites later, so they'd get, you know, additional traffic. Right.
Right. Now this might be down the line, but if we can think of, you know, it's not just the TV that's serving the pop-up fact checking, but if there's a companion app or something like that where they can actually go back to look at what they missed. Or fact checks that did not come out yet during a live event. That would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I don't know, June, if you want to fill them in on sort of our latest vision, but the idea that we basically have one, I think the latest vision is that what you guys are building as a back end will power two different families of apps. One would be apps for a TV and web, and then the other would be mobile apps like FactStream, but everything would come from a single CMS, from a single microphone that is converting voice to text. So that would eliminate the problem of having 100,000 microphones all doing voice to text, submitting to the cloud. And basically we become the microphone, and then we're pushing the content to these different platforms simultaneously. So we're pushing it to TV, we're pushing it to the web, we're pushing it to the apps.
Right. Yep, that's very much what we're working towards.
Did the blink testing, did it show any preference, like when you had it in the top right corner, top left corner, but I guess they decided on the bottom third, was there like a lot of evidence showing that people preferred the bottom third?
Third, hated place. We had expected big.
Hello? I think we're having internet connection problems again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's there.
I think it's data.
Yeah, I can't. I see you guys perfectly fine, but I don't hear.
Yeah, I think it's Bill. He seems to be frozen. Oh, there. He might be back.
There we go. All right. Did I miss something?
We missed you. Whatever you were saying about the present or where the location on the screen preference
Sure.
was.
So the I don't think that Blink gave a second choice. I think Blink just said that there was a strong preference for lower third.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Bill. That was really, really interesting and useful.
Great. All right. Well, good to see you guys. Are we meeting Monday?
Yeah, next meeting will be soon, so Monday, and I think we'll just save the progress update till Monday then, because we're running out of time in this meeting.
Great. All right. We'll see you guys Monday.
Thanks a lot.
Do you think we can change the Monday meeting?
Yeah.